You're listening to the podcast where we talk about life, sports, family, and everything in between. Welcome to Just Talking Out Loud with your hosts, Ron and Terri.
All right, welcome to the podcast, Just Talking Out Loud. I'm Ron.
I'm Terri.
And we are very happy to have our special guest, Beth, Terri's mom, Beth. Hi, Beth.
Hi.
And we're going to talk today about alcoholism. Our podcast is built on talking about family, talking about, we talk about everything, but today we're going to really focus on family, alcoholism. And if you are in a situation that you're not sure how to deal with it, there's help, not just for the alcoholic, but also for the family. That's important too. But we're going to start right at the beginning with Beth. And whenever I talk to Beth, so we've been trying to do this for a couple weeks, and we finally got her over. We had to get chili. We had chili. See, we had chili as a meal, and that's how we got her to come to. No, I'm just kidding. But we've been talking. Whenever we talk, she starts going with all these like stories that I've been in the family almost 40 years, if you count us dating, and there were things that I did not know still, and we're learning as we go, and so that's what we're going to talk about. But the gentleman we are talking about too, not just her dad, but Ray, we miss him greatly. He was a great man, passed away in 2020? Because is that
March?
Yeah, because it's during the COVID
shutdown. Yeah,
yeah, and I only and I'm going to get ahead of myself here, but I only know Ray as this big giant teddy bear, and he welcomed me into the family, like a son. I mean, that's how I know him. So with these things that we're learning, I know some of this stuff, but some we may not know. But let's start right, if you don't mind, right from the beginning. You were born in Midland, Michigan.
Right.
And you had a big family.
Right. I was the oldest of 7 children.
And your mom, did she work? Did she have a job?
No, she had enough to do.
Yeah, I was going to say 7. Yeah, 7 children would be that is work. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's probably harder work than actually going to work. Talk a little bit about your life in Midland, what your dad did, and we'll go from there.
Okay, my dad was he was in business with his father to start out with, and they owned a lumber yard. But I don't know how old I was, but he started building homes. And so he was a contractor, and he built homes. I don't know that I can do years, but
that's okay.
Anyway, we lived in a small town, Sanford, and he did most of his work in the next town, Midland, which was Dow Chemicals there. And but he had a big contract with the school, and there was a strike, and the people working for him wouldn't go over this picket lines, mm-hmm. and it was beginning to freeze, and he was at an important place in the building, and it needed to be closed in, and nobody would go over the picket lines, and so he went bankrupt over that job. And before this, in the wintertime, when there wasn't much going on, my mother and dad took the children that weren't going to school and went to Florida for a while. And
you guys, the other ones were home. He just took the 2 youngest.
He has a family friend, always moved in and stayed with the ones that were in school, and they took the ones that weren't going to school, and they went to Florida.
See, that's what when we heard this, this is the first time I'd heard that a couple weeks ago, and it just kind of hit me. I'm like, wait a minute. They went to Florida. I thought maybe he was building houses, but he wasn't building houses.
No, it was winter time when he went to Florida, and nothing much.
But he left you in Michigan with all the snow.
Right.
So you guys went to school. They went to Florida during that time, and you did not know that your dad was an alcoholic. You had no idea.
Mm-mm. No, I didn't. I know he wasn't home a lot. I just figured he was working. I never asked questions, and most of the time I was in bed when my dad came home. And but I must have known something because I had a friend visiting one night, and she woke me up and she said, "What is that noise?" And I'm listening, and I said, "Oh, it's my father pacing the floor." My father had a bad ulcer, but he didn't help it because he drank.
Yeah.
And so that was his cure. He just paced the floor until things got better.
Your mom, though, never, like, there was no argue. We'll get into this too about how you handled things and how your mom did. But do you think that's part of the reason why you had no ideas? Your mom was so maybe quiet about it. Maybe things were happening after you guys were gone. I don't know.
Well, as I've thought about it, my mother was adopted.
Oh.
She was adopted by an older couple, but she also came from a big family. I don't know exactly how many. I have met like 4 of her siblings, but I don't know how many of them there were. Later in life, they did get together, or they'd come to see each other. In fact, one time I answered the door, and this guy, he said, "Does Thelma Matica live here?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, I'm her brother."
Wow.
And so that's how I got to know some of them. But anyway, so she was adopted, and she was adopted by an older couple that didn't have any children.
Okay.
And I think...
Was it her aunt or something?
I think they were a distant relative. But I think because she went probably from a big family to then with an older couple, and she became very quiet, a very quiet person. And I've heard her holler a few times when her kids really made her.
Yeah, the kids, though.
Yeah. But she's never been a loud person or anything.
Yeah.
But, anyway.
But she really, I mean, she didn't come from, as far as you know, you don't think she came from someone that drank. It was just she handled things a little differently.
I have an idea from some of the stories that I've heard that maybe that was the breakup of the family, and all of the children were given mainly to relatives,
I see.
And so they were dispersed. But when they grew older, they began to search each other out.
Now, you lived in Michigan. And then like I said, you didn't know that your dad was an alcoholic, but you found out when you were relatively young. Someone else told you.
One of the neighbor kids said to me that her mother had said that my dad was an alcoholic. And I said, "Oh, really?"
Did you even know what she was?
I didn't even know what, and I didn't know that he drank.
Right.
Because I'd never seen him drink.
When you went to, would he be already up and gone even when you went to school?
No, he usually got up after us.
Okay.
Because he usually came home later at night, and we were already in bed most of the time. So I don't remember as a small child seeing my dad very much.
And when you found out he was alcoholic, is that when you moved to Florida, or is that similar, or is that how? And I guess the other thing I want to...
It never was said to me.
Right.
Except that one time, one of the neighbor girls had heard her parents discussing the situation.
So they maybe had known him?
Yeah, they were neighbors, so they knew each other and everything.
So with all that bankruptcy and stuff, is that when you moved to?
That's
to Florida.
My dad lost the house, and so I remember packing up the house, and I remember it was middle of winter time when we went to Florida, and Michigan was full of snow and everything. We went around the corner, there's these palm trees. I thought I'd gone to heaven.
It would be a big difference from all the snow you get in Michigan to the summers. And so, okay, you get to Florida, and he was going to go ahead and pick up his business. Is that how?
Well, no, he didn't. To start out with, he had a car dealership, Kaiser Fraser and Henry J. And the kids at school always teased me that my dad sold tin cans. The little Henry J. was the first of a compact car.
Okay. They called him a tin can back then.
Yeah, and the boys are in school.
We're all driving tin cans now.
Yeah.
He was into the popular segment before everybody knew about it.
Right.
So you get to Florida, he starts that, and then he does eventually.
He goes back to building. Yes.
And during this time, though, is he still drinking? Is he still?
It was part of his life.
It was,
and I didn't know any different.
That's all you knew.
But
as you got older, did you notice, because now you're staying up later, or he still didn't come home until?
Well, I worked when I was in high school in a drugstore, and I didn't get off work till 10 o'clock at night. And I know they always had an argument on who was going to leave the house and come get me.
Oh, okay. He probably couldn't come get you, really.
But
he probably did
he
anyway.
He came home, but I assume by what I have put together that he was a big time drinker.
Something I was going to ask too, but before we get into how you met Ray and all that stuff, but when we went to Florida, we were already married, and I got to meet Tom and your mom, your dad and your mom. I only know him as a guy that was always looking for his socks. So was he already? Your dad always said, "Hey, where's my socks?" He was always looking for his socks. But I only knew him. Was he sober? Did he ever get help? Did you know?
No,
he didn't.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
but he never drank at home. That's why I didn't know he was that much of a drinker.
Oh,
he never drank at home. He was always doing business.
You said he was a wheeler dealer, huh?
Yeah.
And the more he got in him, the better dealer he was.
Because you say Tom, he didn't know where his socks is. Grandma laid everything out for him. Like ever since I can remember, Grandma, when you spent the night with him, even on a Friday night and it was Saturday, Ma, where's my socks? Because she didn't feel he had to go anyplace. She might have not laid it out. That's when he would say, Ma, where's my socks? Because she would lay his outfit out for him on the bed, and so he could go shower, and he would just... Is this
even in the...
ever since I can remember. I don't know if he did it when she was little. Would you say... Oh, I don't want to put words...
She's a big enabler.
Okay, that's the word I was going to say, but I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
But she was never in recovery, so...
Yeah, see, that's the other thing. Like, okay, so so he never really sobered up, as far as you know. I mean, I only knew him.
I think he drank less as he got older
he got older. Okay.
because of health issues. Like maybe the doctor said, this medicine don't drink while you're on this medicine or something like that.
Okay.
And that.
But he had bad eyesight.
I know.
And so
drove in a car with him.
One of the last times that he went to get his driver's license, my mother stood behind him and kept shaking her head no to the girl. In other words, don't give him a license.
Regardless of whether he can see it or not. I remember us going down there. He wanted to drive his he had a big caddy.
Yeah.
And my brother-in-law, Ralph, said, I'll drive. Because I think he almost took out the mailbox or something. I can't remember. But anyway.
When Grandma didn't get in the car, that should have been our first clue.
Yeah, she wouldn't even get in.
She wouldn't get in the car. Oh, no, he can show you the post office. If he's driving, she wasn't going.
The post office, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're working as a teenager. When did you meet Ray?
My girlfriend in high school was getting married, and he was in the service, but he was a local fellow, and he was in the Air Force, and they were stationed in West Palm Beach. And so the fellows that he brought for the wedding were all ones that he was in the Air Force with. And that's how I met Ray. I was in the wedding and Ray was in the wedding. And
just a background for my father-in-law, Ray, he actually was from California.
Right. Ray was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then he left. And his, can we say his background wasn't the most stable?
Best. He left home when he was 15.
He was 15. That's what I thought. Yeah.
And he worked in lumber industry
He was a lumberjack, right?
Well, right. They didn't call him lumberjack.
No, they didn't.
Then I forget.
I don't think he liked the name whenever you said
a
it.
logger.
A logger or something like that.
Logger. They called him loggers.
Yeah, because he didn't like when you said lumberjack. He wasn't real fond of that name. So yeah, he leaves the house at 15.
Right.
Works as a logger. Ray, if you're listening, and I know you are. So he works as a logger now, and then he got in young, getting into
the
Air Force, didn't he? Or no?
No, he was at a logging camp and had already got his papers. That was back when they had
the draft.
Okay. And he had got his papers, and by the time he got there, he was supposed to have already been down, but he was in the woods, and so, but he went, and instead of going into the Army, he signed up for the Air Force.
And he had been in war. He was
in Korea.
He was what do they call that?
Gunner.
A gunner.
Gunner in a plane.
In a plane.
He's a big guy.
Yes.
And he was in the back of the plane. I don't know how he got back there. This for the gun in the back.
I think when she says a big man, let me tell you something. When you go to the door for the first time, no, he wasn't there. It was Gary that met me. That's right.
Time.
I had not met Ray until I think the second or third time. And this is a massive man. He was a big man, and in realizing he was a wrestler at one point too. We'll talk about that too as we go. So you meet Ray, or you for the first time at this wedding. Mm-hmm. And what did you think of this man? Now, was he in military clothes?
I more or less had my eye on one of the other guys.
Oh, the truth comes out.
But one of the other girls really snagged the other guy, so then Ray and I were put together.
Oh, okay. Now, is this the wedding itself? That's you were paired with him regardless, or is that how they?
No, just the men were on one side and the women were on the other, but they were there the day before, so we got to know them a little bit before the wedding.
Okay. So you talked to Ray, and he seemed like he
seemed fine.
Yeah. And then did he? Now the wedding goes. Did you guys go on a date? Was there dating?
He came. It was an afternoon wedding.
Okay.
And he came to pick me up to go out for a date that night. My little brother, he's standing there and he looks him up and down and he said, "Are you tough?" I just wanted to stomp on him.
I can only imagine Ray's face, Yeah, wow, he probably reacted. He probably didn't say anything, did he?
No, he didn't.
He's quiet. So you go out, you and the friends go out?
There was another couple with us the first time. And then usually when he came, my friend Barbara and the fellow she was dating, the four of us always went together. And here's how the date starts. You go to the liquor store, and they each go in and get a bottle, and they come and they get in the car, and they open up the bottle, or open up the Cokes, and hand each of us a Coke to drink part of the Coke so then they can pour their liquor out of their bottle into the Coke.
Into the Coke.
Yeah, that's big
That's
deal.
the start.
And then we drive to the beach and sit on the beach while they drink. So but that didn't raise any red flags for you, right? I mean, because anything about it,
right? It wasn't because you didn't come from a home where your dad drank in front of you.
No.
So
on holidays, my grandpa always came out. It's New Year's. We got to all have a drink.
Yeah, but other than that, you never saw your dad drunk. Or did?
Well, when Ray and I were dating, we went to the Christmas party, and I seen.
Oh, that was when
my eyes
were open then for your dad.
Yeah, for my dad.
Now, was Ray more subdued when?
Yeah, he wasn't drinking a lot. He was on his good behavior
when the parents were around. Yeah. So when you went on this date, went to the beach, you drank some Coke, and then they took the Coke and poured it in their bottle. You never thought anything of it.
No. I just didn't drink, so
right. I mean, why would you, right? I mean, just figured we're out. This is what we're just going to have some fun or whatever. So after that date, did you guys continue to?
Yes, he first couple times he came. The one friend came with him. Well, then he could see that we were kind of becoming an item, so he didn't come back.
Didn't want to bear a third wheel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He was kind of getting in the way.
Yeah, nobody wants to. Yeah. So you guys are, things are really working out. You like him a lot. He seems to like you a lot.
Well, I think my mother might have been the catch, because when she knew he was coming, she was making something special for him. Oh, Ray's coming this weekend. We're going to have whatever.
So she really took to Ray.
Yeah, she really liked
And I think
Ray really
he liked her too.
He loved
Thought
her
of
like a
her
mother,
as his
yes.
mom, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because the way she treated him and stuff.
right.
And then, of course, with your dad.
Oh, they fit right in.
I'm sure he just went right in there.
Of course, we weren't married yet the first Christmas. And, of course, my dad was a builder, and so he went around everywhere, and everywhere they had a bottle for him. And I'm going to get ahead of the story.
That's
but
okay.
Anyway, so my mother always had all these bottles under the sink. And one time they picked her up, my grandmother, for the weekend. And pretty soon my grandmother was throwing up. So my mother put her in the car and took her to the emergency room. And the nurse came out and said, "There's nothing the matter with her. She's drunk."
Oh, God. She got the wrong bottle?
Well, she was nipping on all the bottles that were under the sink.
Uh-oh. Grandma's a little tootsie. A little tipsy. Oh, boy. Oh, my. So you guys are dating. Things are going well. Family loves him. Thinks he's the greatest catch in the world.
My grandpa, when anything was going on, you had to have a picnic, weenie roast.
Oh, okay.
So whenever the guys were coming on the weekend, because the two of them were coming to start out with, we had to have a big picnic in the backyard and roast weenies.
And I'm sure that was the only thing that was getting roasted or toasted, for that matter. Huh?
Well, no, there was no drinking.
Oh, okay.
No drinking.
Okay.
No drinking.
So, it wasn't like...
See, I never seen him drink a lot.
I was going to say there's no red flags here, right?
No, not till my dad's Christmas party, and he had plenty that night. But so did I.
Okay. Okay.
But it only took two for me.
I was going to say, you'd be like me. I'm not much of that either. You guys continued that, and you got married.
Right. I was a senior in high school.
Okay.
In 1956, I first got married.
Then you graduated.
Then I graduated from high school, and then I had a baby. So 1956 is the big year.
Gary was born. That's Terry's brother, yeah. Gary. Now, so you guys stay in Florida, right?
Yes.
You're in Florida. What is Ray doing as far as working and what?
My dad thought he should work for him.
Okay.
But come to find out, my dad and my grandmother had died, so my dad had inherited property in Midland, Michigan. So he started going to Midland in the summertime and building houses.
Oh, he goes back to Michigan.
So then some of the guys that Ray worked with for my dad said, "Well, come to work with us." They were paying more. And so when my dad came back and he expected Ray to come back to work for him, and he said, "Well, are you going to pay me?" And I don't remember the amount. And he said, "Of course not." He said, "Then I'm not coming to work for you."
So Ray didn't go back?
No. But he was working for builders. But you got to remember, in Florida, the building trade would be hot, everything, and there's all kinds of jobs, and then all of a sudden, you couldn't buy a job. So he did a lot of things on the side. He bartended. He went commercial fishing.
That's what I remember.
And did a lot of things, just trying to make it. And he eventually, he had a job for quite a few years working for the county.
He wrestled. Or was this before?
That's when he was in the Air Force.
He wrestled. That was before.
When he was stationed in West Palm Beach to make some extra money, he would go to Miami on the weekends and wrestle. And
well, we're talking about at that time wasn't it was just like the wrestling that my grandfather used to watch, and tell me he would do it at local rinks, rings or whatever.
At that time, there was always the wrestling that you see on television, but the last match was a real wrestling thing.
Oh.
And those were the kinds he was in. But I started going to the wrestling matches when I was working in the restaurant, and a whole bunch of it's because the wrestlers found out this restaurant and the lady was a very good cook. And they started stopping there on their way through, so she kept telling about the wrestlers. So we went everybody that patronized the restaurant, 2 carloads of us went to the wrestling matches to see them. But the way back then they had so many matches where there were all this flipping in, all of that.
Right.
And then the last match of the night was a real wrestling match.
It was like anything goes almost.
Yeah, it was a real,
and that was
not this flipping and all that kind of stuff.
Well, Ray was not much. Ray's a big man, so he's not going to do a lot of flipping. Yeah. Really. If he could, don't get me wrong, he was. I seen pictures. He was very fit, but this flipping was not going to be part of it. Did he win some of these matches?
I have no idea.
You don't know.
He never talked about it.
He never said, "Oh, you're watching them."
No, this is afterwards.
Oh,
well, after he was done.
Oh, I see.
She went to the wrestling match after he was done.
He was staying home babysitting, and I was going with all the people I worked with.
You were going. Oh, he was at home. Wow, this is really opened my eyes to Ray. He's babysitting. Wow. So you guys get married.
Just hope you didn't have a bad diaper while you're gone.
I had a job in the evenings.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I had a job in the evenings. He worked in the daytime. I worked in the evenings, and then the crowd in the restaurant where I worked in the evenings, they all went to the wrestling match. Ray say, "Don't babysat."
Now, during this time, has anything changed? Did you notice anything that, maybe a little bit more drinking? You didn't notice any of that stuff?
Yes, there were times that when he actually disappeared.
Oh, he disappeared.
For days, yeah. He was the kind of drinker that... It's like he fell off the earth for a few days.
He would have blackouts, actually.
I remember you telling us a story, and again, we were talking about this, about you getting sick.
One time I was sick, so I went to the drugstore and asked the druggist, I had like strep throat or something, and could he give me anything because I didn't have money to go to the doctor. So he said, and then in the process of getting this to me, he said, "Hey, I seen your husband." And I said, "Where did you see him at?" "Oh, I was in Naples," he said. And I seen him there. Well, he'd been out in a fishing boat.
That's when he was doing fishing.
He was doing commercial fishing,
okay.
And they had gone in with their load and sold it in Naples and went back out, and I did not know that.
Well, you were, like I said, you had 4 kids at this point, right? Or no?
Yeah,
you were already, you were born, Terri?
3
oh, you weren't born yet?
Point.
I don't know whether Terri was born.
Okay, but still, you had 3 kids, you're sick, and really no money.
Well, maybe a couple dollars.
I know, but he's out. He comes back in.
And he
maybe
didn't even call
never
me.
Says. Well, it wasn't.
You didn't
no
have
cell phones.
Yeah, like you do nowadays.
But I don't know that. Does it matter? Would you think it would have mattered?
It probably wouldn't have mattered.
And he would do this. He would just disappear. How often did this?
Just when he started drinking. The how you spot a real alcoholic, they can't have just one drink.
Right.
So once he got started, but then he could stop and he could not, and he wouldn't drink for maybe 2 weeks, and he'd always be home and everything. And then all of a sudden somebody would say, "Stop and have a beer with me." And then you don't see him.
It would start up again.
Yep.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that he could actually stop for 2 weeks.
And see his best friend, it was my girlfriend's husband, he drank constantly. All the time he had a bottle. And a few times I tried to make an agreement with him, drink at home. Well, he'd buy a 5th. And like half the fifth's gone, and my mouth started, don't you think you had enough,
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about, because the way your mom handled it, and
she
the way
never said anything.
Right, and the way is very different.
Yes. My mother was very quiet and everything, and I think a lot of that had to do with her being adopted and
stuff.
Everything.
So where do you think you got your, like, because again,
I'm more like my dad.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because with again, we're talking about a very big man, and you would just get in his face.
Yes, I would. I was not afraid of him.
And he never,
And she should have been. I mean, the things I saw when I was a kid, I'm like, he's going to kill her. He never, ever hit her, though. I mean, he might have give her a shove so that he could go through the door, but he never, ever hit her. He was taught that if you hit a woman, that you're, a weak person. It takes a weak man to hit a woman. So he never.
Yeah. So he, at this point, as you're seeing, it's becoming more frequent that the drinking is becoming. You now, make sure I get this right, because you're still in Florida at this point, right? Because you do move to Michigan eventually.
All my children were born in Florida.
All of them, okay.
And when we moved to Michigan, Terry was the baby in between Ray and I in the front seat.
Okay.
I was 6 months old.
Okay,
I don't remember it at all.
What made the change? What brought you from? Because at the time,
because it's hard making a living in Florida.
In Florida,
it's on again, off again,
right.
And if you're not and when you're barely making enough money to meet your bills, it's hard to save anything for the times when you're not going to have any money coming in.
Do you think you ever thought about going and working for your dad again? Was that ever an option?
Occasionally he did.
Okay.
But my dad paid very poorly.
Oh, okay. So you guys, what made you decide we're going to Michigan? What was the deciding?
No job.
So you moved to Michigan. He had a prospect there or no?
Yes, my dad was building.
Oh,
so he was going back to work for my dad.
Oh, he was. Okay.
But we went for the summertime. Our argument was all summer is that he said we were staying there. And I said, if you don't have another job in September, besides working for my dad, I'm taking my children and I'm going back to Florida when school starts. And he said, no, we're staying here. He kept telling me. And
staying in Michigan.
Yeah, and I said, no, if you don't have a different job than working for my dad, because there was going to be no work come wintertime.
Right.
So it wouldn't make any difference. So, and but he went out and he got him a job at one of the automobile factories in the.
I didn't know.
He made molds.
In Bay
really?
City?
I did not know that.
No,
in
Saginaw. In Saginaw.
We lived 2 or 3 years in Saginaw.
Okay.
Down the street from my sister.
That's the first house I remember.
It's the one in Saginaw.
It was a greenhouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
His
Okay.
Saginaw.
Yes, and so we were there, and he got hired at, I can't remember the name of the part of the company, but it's in the automobile factory, and he worked in the part where they make molds for the parts for the car, and that's in the part where he was working.
So he did that. Did he do both, or he quit your?
Okay, he started in September, and springtime came. He was like working the night shift, so he would get off in the morning and he would go to the jobs where they're working on the roads, and he got him a job working on the roads.
Oh, that's
heavy. He was
heavy equipment
operator.
Because that's what I remember. When I came in the picture at that time, he was working.
That's what
heavy
he was
equipment.
doing when he worked for the county.
Okay.
He was operating a soil cement machine in Florida. At that time, the base for the road, they mixed the sand and cement for a base for a road, and then they put the blacktop and stuff on it. That was his job for the county, and he worked there 2-3 years.
Well, that was in Florida, and then he was having that background probably helped him get on with Michigan too.
Right.
So he wasn't working for your dad then.
Well,
because I was wondering.
That summer, he
the
worked for
summer
my
he
dad,
did.
and then September he went and got a job in the foundry. It was the foundry part of the. And then when springtime came, he was working the night shift. So when he got off in the morning, he started going around to where the jobs were working
For the
building
road.
roads.
I think what I've always known Ray to be a worker. So this is showing that alcohol was not interfering with. He knew that he needed to make money. The only problem was sometimes he would disappear.
But he never lost a job.
Right.
So somehow he got himself to work, even when he was not doing well. He got himself to work.
He got up, and lots of times he ate breakfast and went and threw it up and went to work. I said, I just love this, being called out of bed and make this breakfast.
And then, he's throwing it up. So is your dad's not living in Michigan, though? He's still traveling back and forth.
He's in between.
So wintertime, he's going back to Florida.
Of course.
Your dad and Ray, did they ever have, was that a problem where the two would, he would kind of drag Ray into, let's do this, or was that never really an issue?
Ray never said very much about it, but when they were drinking together, he would try to get Ray in trouble.
Well, my thought was, I just wondered if they did it. Yeah, I know there was some, because Ray's not a mean, he was not a mean drunk or alcoholic.
He was never even mean whenever he'd drink, and Mom would get mad at him, like when she'd yell at him or if she'd leave, then he would get upset. I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to upset your mother, I love all of you, and whenever he would.
I can see, like I said, I only know him one way. So he's always working. That's the thing.
He always works.
And a lot of times an alcoholic, they are able to, it's amazing. I mean,
for a long time, he had a job on Sunday because nobody wanted 10 bar at the local bar down the street a ways. And he worked every Sunday from, I don't know what time they opened, probably noon, till they closed at night. He worked at that bar.
And then start again Monday, right? Start his job.
And then went back to work on his regular job.
When he started working on the road, he worked on the road full time at one point in Michigan, right? Or no? Did he ever work? He did.
Yes.
Because then that was his job at that point.
Yes.
So, okay, so did he ever, when you got to Michigan, was he still doing the disappearing act, or it wasn't quite like it was in Florida?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't like that.
It wasn't like that anymore.
But there would be times he'd come home and he'd be inebriated. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about when things started to change, because I want to make sure people understand that we're talking about
alcoholism.
To me, alcoholism. There is hope,
recovery,
and a lot of it has to do with your faith, how you found your faith, and how you found the strength. And when you are trying to help someone that has the problem, you also need help and how to deal with that, how to help that person without pushing them away. Right. I guess. And even though you were...
I always say I did whatever when I'm sharing with somebody. I tried this or I tried that, rather than say, go and do this.
Because you have experience, Yeah,
so that's the way I approach somebody. I just say, well, I would try this. And if that doesn't work, come back and I'll tell you another thing I tried.
So... when you guys are still in Michigan, he's got the job. When did things change? In other words, like, I know he'd gotten some trouble, and this is...
Well, we bought a house in Midland. And he was working for a local contractor, doing road work and stuff. For when we lived in Saginaw, he worked for one over there. I think 2 summers they were repaving some of the city streets. So he worked that a couple summers, and then he got that job in Midland, so we moved to Midland. Well, how we moved to Midland is we were renting this house in Saginaw, And my friend called me and said, hey, my sister's got a house in Midland and people are moving out of it. Would you rather live in Midland? And I said, sure, because I'm traveling back and forth to see my mom and dad all the time. And so we went and looked at it, and then we rented the house in Midland. And then Ray got a job. I think he worked 2 years for a road contractor that was in Midland. So then that's for the first. He just went out because he was still working for the in the foundry, and he just went out when springtime came, out to the jobs and got himself a job, and started working on the road.
So he does that. How long were you in? Well, before we do the move, because you do move again. You move a lot. There's a lot of moving.
We've had a lot of moving.
Yeah, and even as a child,
it was mainly for work. Well,
only once.
Big move was from Michigan to
Florida. Yeah, for you, and then you went, as you were married, moved back to Michigan. So Ray has this job. At this point, he's just working road work, and something happens, and it really kind of changes all of your lives in a way.
Well, he lost his license because he had a DUI. And so one whole summer I had to drive him to work and go pick him up. So that, and along with that, this was probably the 60s. He had a very sharp judge, and the judge sentenced him to counseling.
Okay.
And then the counselor said, I want to talk to your wife. When he came home and said, my counselor wants to see you. You're supposed to call him up and make an appointment. And I said, what in the world does he want to see me for?
Exactly.
And so I went, and he told me about Al-Anon, and then I needed to go. And so in Midland, Michigan, I started going to Al-Anon meetings.
But you also were taking the kids to church.
I've always taken my kids to church, but also right in this very same time, my neighbor came across the street one day and said, Beth, I'd like to start a neighborhood Bible study. Would you come? And I said, sure. And this is where my life really changed. Okay. I began reading the Bible. And saying you're a Christian and going to church is one thing, but reading the Bible and really knowing what it says, it really changes you. And so I really began to change because I was reading my Bible. And I can remember my friend Corky, I'd be reading. I went and bought a paperback New Testament. I just wrote this to my cousin because his wife just died, and I tried to send him encouragement. I said I went and I bought me a paperback New Testament, and I just started reading them. Well, and my friend Corky, she started reading hers too, and I'd read something and I'd call her up and I'd say, Corky, did you read this?
That's how long they've been friends.
Yeah, I mean, I
was 3 or 4 when we lived on Waldo Road in Corky, lived on Beach, which we're right around the corner from each other. So they've been friends since me and Cassie were
like 3 years old.
So you had, I mean, that was huge as far as support, even though they probably, I don't know at this point, do they know what you're actually dealing with at home?
Yeah, she was dealing with it too.
Well, I don't want to get too
far. Debbie knew across the street.
Okay.
She knew
there
was a lot
going on.
I wasn't quiet.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, that's
just a big mouth, and I holler.
And everybody knew because there was a lot of houses. They were close together.
Yeah, close together, and
But I mean, that really though is huge in that support. But then you also had the Al-Anon to help you deal with not just what you're going through, but how to help him in a way. Is that no?
It's not how.
It's not like that.
The Al-Anon program is get your focus off the other person and focus on yourself and what you're doing.
On you.
And leave them alone. Well, especially if they are trying to be sober and if they are going to a program for themselves. I don't need to tell him how to do his program. I need to keep my mouth shut and just pray.
Well, was that tough for you? I mean, in the beginning, because
I never asked him much about the program, and I never. A couple of times I went and heard an AA
he's in the
speaker.
program. He's already.
Yeah, he started in the program too.
Okay. He's in AA.
Yeah, once the counselor.
Yeah.
I think what they do is a lot of times now they sentence you to 90 meetings in 90 days, right?
Yeah, now he wasn't sentenced that way, but that's how they do it nowadays. Yeah.
So he's in the program. You are helping. You're doing your thing too, and you've got a nice. Even though the Bible study was just for you too, right? I mean, for you to help your strength and what you're going through.
I can remember one time things were really bad at our house, and I said, I came over to tell you today that I'm throwing my Bible away and I'm done.
Well, I didn't see that coming. Do you know this?
And so anyway, they said, sit down. We're going to pray.
Can I ask what led to that?
Probably big drunk.
Okay, so there's something that
fight.
happened.
Yeah, because she didn't back down. Like if he said he was going back out, she'd say, "Oh no, you're not." She'd shut the door and lock it. And
you're like, "This isn't working."
I said, even though I'm trying to serve God and everything, things aren't working out, so I'm done. I'm throwing the Bible away.
And they were like.
Oh, no, come on, sit down. We got to pray about this.
And they got you to calm down and thank God for that. Yeah. So Ray's in the program, right? And he started. And there is a situation that arises where that he has a job because you're driving him, right? Does he lose a job?
No. He's never lost.
He never lost a job. But I thought when you moved, you were saying get a job, or because when we talked about this, I don't know, it's been a couple weeks. I thought you had said, listen, if you don't have a job.
Oh, that's way back.
Oh, that's back in Florida. Okay,
that was back when they were
Michigan.
They were in Saginaw and
and then we ended up staying
because he went and got the foundry job.
But that was before you guys moved to PA.
Yes.
That happened before. Okay. Mm-hmm. I was thinking that all tied into you moving for some reason.
Wasn't he laid off or something when he got started coming
laid off in the winter?
In the winter.
Yes,
in
because of the weather, he would get laid off in the winter, and then a neighbor got an opportunity with Ohio coal down here.
And he said, and Ray, you don't have a job yet. Do you want to go with me? Because I'm sure they got lots of jobs. And that's how we got to Pennsylvania.
And you moved here when you were in sixth grade. Same as your mom moved to Florida in sixth grade. And that was a tough move for your family, but we'll talk about that in a second. So you guys decide, because he's laid off, and so now Ray is doing well, right, in recovery. He's doing okay. Would you say that or no at this point?
Yeah, he's,
It's tough because it's not a cure. There is no cure.
Well,
it's always there.
Yes.
But
and then working in the type of work, lots of times he couldn't get to meetings because he's working until it's dark and the meeting was already over with,
And then coming here was huge for him because meeting, when we had the funeral, meeting some of these men that he had touched, and we'll talk about that as we go. I'm jumping ahead because for me, Ray was a special person. He really was. And you are too. You guys welcome me in. In fact, let me tell this story real quick. So I'm going to get off the subject just for a second. But so I go to Terri's house. We're having dinner and we're sitting down and we're having steak and they're all staring at me. So I'm eating this. I don't know if you remember this or not. I'm eating this steak, not realizing that it's deer. Oh. It was deer meat.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. You don't remember this? You guys are the one that got me started on this.
Oh, okay.
And you're all like kind of looking at me. You're like, you like that, huh? I said, yeah, it's pretty good. So you guys got me on deer meat. But Ray always welcomed, you guys always welcomed me in. And like I said, when I hear some of this stuff and what he's been through, but seeing the man he was afterwards, that's the man. And not just, we'll talk about Ray's faith too. We'll talk about that too. But so you guys, he goes with the gentleman from Ohio Coal. They come to PA. And because of all his background, that was huge to get the job here in PA. So he gets the job, and then you guys decided we're going to PA. In 1975? 6?
Yeah. We moved Christmas
December
vacation.
28th, 1975.
Okay. And you guys, because I hear this story all the time. So you guys come look for a house, and you find this one place on 19 here in Washington, and it's got kids everywhere. It's a big plan.
Yeah,
and
it's up there on that hill.
Yeah.
And Ray said, let's not look here. Because where we lived in Midland.
And that's where us kids probably would have fit in the best, because it was more like what we were used to.
Because, there was no playground or anything. And the kids were playing ball in the street. And, it wasn't a busy street or anything. It's a neighborhood,
right. And he just wasn't having it.
And he said, let's not go up there. So he drug us out to the country, and my kids would come home from school and said, Mom, you moved us to hell.
Should we say McGuffey? They moved to McGuffey.
Yeah, nothing to
in,
do. You weren't
Claysville,
born and
PA.
bred there.
See, the culture in Midland, Dow Chemicals, big in Midland.
Huge.
And they have a center there. The kids go free.
The community center. We could play ball. We took ballet.
You could, and they had a swimming pool, and it was all free. And we moved to Pennsylvania, and so the girls were doing dance. And I forget what it cost for them to have.
We had a tumbling class up there, and when she looked into gymnastics here, the Y and Gym Dandies was all that was here.
And it cost big time.
So this move was drastic for the kids.
Oh, and it was drastic for us too.
It was different,
but it was a steady job,
right? Yeah, because in PA,
and I think
you
it was
work.
kind of a new start for Dad, because these
That's
people
what I was gonna
didn't
say.
know him in drinking days. They hadn't seen him.
Well, because I remember one time he was supposed to get the speaker for the AA convention was going to be in Wheeling, and music. He was supposed to get music for it. Well,
Ray was?
Yeah,
Oh.
Ray was assigned to get the music.
Oh.
Well, so we had to visit these bars and listen to bands, And Ray would go up and talk to him and say, could you go somewhere and play all night and not have a drink? And, someone would say, yeah, I think we could. And others would say, no,
couldn't do it. So, coming to PA for him was a start over. Because he's getting away from all those influences, if you will.
And the hangouts where he's used to going, they aren't here.
Yes.
So he's a sober man when he comes here. In fact, when he first came, he came over. He got hired by Ohio Coal, and he was staying in Ohio. And he had a little room, and of course it was over a bar, And he went to an AA meeting, and the guy said, well, how are you doing, Ray? And he said, if I don't find a new place to live, I'm going downstairs and join them. And he said, well, Ray, do you know what I do? And Ray said, no. And he said, well, I'm in charge of the halfway house in Steubenville, Ohio. He said, if you want to, you can come and stay there because we're not full right now. But you come with the agreement that if we start to fill up, you're the one that has to move. He said, okay, I'll take it. So he was there like 3 months for the summertime. He was staying in a halfway house.
You guys were
Still in Michigan.
You were in Michigan. Okay.
Still in Michigan.
Because we knew at the start of that school year that we were moving, because she didn't put us in gymnastics, because we would have been trying out for the citywide gymnastics team. And she said, oh, no, I'm going to not let you try out, because she didn't want us taking a spot. and
leave.
And here we were there until December. We could have done the whole fall.
Oh, well, you didn't know.
I didn't know how long. In fact, I asked the principal because I was working at school. I said, "Does it matter to you if I leave in the middle of the year?" And he said, "No, I'll find somebody to replace you."
Oh, you're working at the school district.
Yeah, I've been I worked way over 30 years in the school districts.
Wow.
And when I went to Pennsylvania, somebody new was on the board at McGuffey because I had filled out I had stopped at the business office and filled out for a job.
Okay.
And a friend that I met through a Bible study, she said to me, "Beth, didn't you fill out an application for a job?" And I said, "Yes, I did." She said, "Well, when I pulled them, yours wasn't there. So I just pulled out a blank one. I put your name and I looked up your telephone number and put it on it and put it in the pile." And then when the lady and the lady wasn't from McGuffey, they hired somebody from away.
Okay.
And when she started talking to me and found out I'd already worked for 5 years for a school district, well, she hired me right off the bat.
Experience helps.
Yeah.
All the time.
But really, that's got to do with God. It really does. Because if someone else in the school district would have interviewed me, not this lady that wasn't from McGuffey, I never would have got a job. Because around here, if you don't know somebody, you don't get a job. And that's just the way it is.
It's very true.
Right.
It is very true. But God opens doors. I mean, I can I can tell stories myself about how
jobs.
I've had jobs.
Yes.
That might be another podcast because it's just, there's doors open should never open. So you get on with, so we talk a lot about McGuffey, but you ended up finding a house. You didn't go to where all the kids were. You decided to go to Claysville, PA. Now, driving.
It was a nice house.
It was a beautiful house. I really like that house.
But it was on a hillside when we were used to flat
ground. Yeah, it was on a hill.
So anyway, it was really a nice place, and it was fine for when all of our children were at home. But when it got to, I had to mow the ground.
Lots of mowing.
There was
lots of 2 acres. Yeah, a lot of.
About 2 acres of hill.
It was an acre.
It was almost
But it was
2,
just-
but
it was
in
just
the gully, there was a gully, and then,
A lot of hills, a lot of, So what made you decide Claysville? I always wondered about that. Like,
Well, we came over and we went to a realtor.
Okay.
And there was only 2 houses on the market that we could afford by our income.
Mm-hmm.
We never went. One was in Claysville and one was in Avila. And the group, the Al-Anon group I belonged to in Midland, said, when you walk in the door, you're going to know it's the right house. Because I was all, what am I going to do, And I didn't really like the house. I really didn't. But it had this beautiful kitchen.
It did. Yeah, it was.
But the paneling was in the rest of the house that I did not like. But I thought, I think I can.
You can deal with it.
I can deal with it.
Yeah.
So that's what got me was the kitchen in that house. Because in the house I had in Midland, you walked in the back door and there was our kitchen table. And then our cupboards were all along the wall, and that's what we had.
That was it.
There was the back door and a window, and then the door that went into the living room, and there was the door that went to downstairs, all in that little area.
So this is it's a big house that you moved to Claysville.
The kitchen was probably 2 to 3 times the size of our kitchen in Michigan.
I remember that house, the wraparound porch. It was really.
That was real.
Oh, we loved the porch. We sat. They had 2 swings, one on the side and one on the front.
Well, it was scenic too because
porch.
you guys had the woods between you and the highway.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
And then just to sit on the porch.
Yeah, it was
wonderful.
It was scenic. So, Ray, you guys, you make the move, and Ray is really. I'm assuming things because I don't come into the picture until 80. 82?
82.
Yeah.
83.
So Ray's doing really well now with this group.
Yeah, he's got that. He's got a good job with Ohio Coal and running heavy equipment. That's, he, there for a while in Midland, he was working on a plant they were doing in Midland, and he worked there and had a good job too. But working with heavy equipment, you have a good job and then you have a layoff.
Yeah.
And you have a good job and then you have a layoff. So I've learned, I could not believe he was working on something in Michigan and making really good money. And so I always saved money because I knew wintertime we were going to be laid off. Those people never saved money. They went up food stamps and everything as soon as they were laid off. I could not believe that they didn't have enough sense to save money while they were making big money.
You knew they were going to get laid off.
And I knew, well, it happened years, so I knew, put some money away while you were getting money.
But his AA group, the men that he, when he got in there, really took him in, it seemed like, to help him.
They were close. I
know he gained friends from them coming in after he'd already been there.
Well, then when we moved to Pennsylvania was where, because he was
that's what I mean.
He was in new sobriety when he got the job over here.
Okay,
and so then that one guy took him and he lived at the halfway house till we found a house and moved over here. And then one time he was going to the union meeting and he rode with somebody that lived in Claysville. And so on the way home after the union meeting, the guy said, "Is it all right if we stop and have a beer?" And Ray said, "Oh, yeah, it's okay if we stop and have a beer." And, another guy came by on his way home, and Ray was sitting in there drinking Coke. And he said, "Ray, what are you doing in here?" And here he said, "Well, we stopped for a beer 2 hours ago."
Oh.
He said, "Well, I'm on my way home. You want to ride home with me?"
Oh.
He said, "Okay, I'll go."
But talk about a challenge for Ray. I mean, here you are, you're new at this.
And he's sitting in the bar.
And you want to, and the person that's driving, you're like, well, you don't want to say, no, you should, but he didn't. But yet here he is in an environment that he knows is going to be really tough.
And I used to tell him, "I don't know why you like to go to the bars, so they smell bad." And he came home that day and he said, "I now know what you're talking about. Yes, the bars smell."
Well, when you're drinking, I don't think they smell it.
Well, because he was a smoker.
Yeah, at that time he still.
Because when I met him, he wasn't smoking anymore. So at that point, that time, was he done smoking, or that was after?
No,
after.
He didn't quit smoking.
Marty was in the service, and Marty came home on leave, and Dave Harden had some property, and Ray put in that wood stove. So Dave told him, "Go over there, and there's lots of wood down." And he said, "Go in. You're helping me by getting the wood out." So him and Marty went. Well, they had to go up a bank to load the wood in the truck, and up the bank and up the bank. And Ray went, and Marty thought, he's hollering, Dad. He didn't know what happened to him. He out of breath. He quit smoking.
That's when he said.
Shortly after that, he put him down. He didn't smoke anymore.
So now he's not smoking. He's not drinking. Oh my gosh! Right? What the heck am I going to do?
And that's bad. If you've ever been to an AA meeting, when they used to take me on Saturday night, if all the other kids had something to do, and we were new there, so they would take me with them because they didn't want to leave me alone. And that room was so full of cigarette smoke that I had allergies. Yeah. I would come home, my eyes were all swelled shut. It was bad. I liked the meeting. I liked the people and hearing other people's stories and stuff. But then it would bother my allergies so bad that then the bigger kids started taking me to the Claysville dance with them, even though I really wasn't of age to go there.
Oh, yeah, that's another story too. My gosh. Well, what's interesting though is Ray is building some interesting really good, strong friendships, because not only is he getting help, but he is at some point, right? He starts to help people coming in and becomes what's the word?
Sponsor.
Sponsor. And I get, when you meet some of these men and they talk about Ray and they talk about his stories that he would when they had him, because I remember going over to your house and you guys would go to your meetings, you'd have Al-Anon, and he would be a speaker, or maybe it would be a special event and they would ask him to speak because of all of his experiences that he had been through, all the things. And
new people in the program, who I don't know who Janet was talking to, and so she said who her dad was. He's your dad? He's your dad?
Yeah.
Oh, have you heard him speak? And they said, oh, yeah.
Because Ray didn't pull any punches. He told them exactly what he went through. And I didn't want to touch on it, but I'm going to touch on it because, when we talk about getting sober or, even quitting cigarettes. I remember, saying, Dad, I wish you would quit. And when our first son was born, he said, I'm done. And I know how hard it is. Addiction is an addiction.
Yeah.
But when Ray needed help, right, and he's coming off, it was not easy for him. It was a very difficult time.
He was in the hospital, wasn't he?
He had 5 days in a unit in Saginaw, Michigan when he came.
Is this right after the DUI? Mm-hmm. It is. Mm-hmm. So he was
sentenced to a counselor.
Okay.
And then he went through detox. It was 5 days. He went through detox. And then, nowadays they have 30 days or so, but he only had 5 days.
And he hallucinated and everything coming
That's
out.
what, I remember you telling me that. You said, again, I want to stress this. This is a huge man. This guy, when I finally met him, like, oh man, I better treat her right because this is not going to go good. But when you talk to him, he was just such a sweet man. He would tell me
you would call
jokes
him a big teddy bear, and I would tell you stories of things he did when I was little, and you would be like, "No, I can't see your dad doing that."
You don't see that.
Him and Chuck, when we lived on Waldo Road and they lived on Beach Street, Chuck was a trucker, but when he was home on the week, if he came home on the weekend, they drank all weekend, and if they said something, you believed them. There was a time when Gary was with us, all in the kids on Waldo Road, and they told us, don't go in the backyard. Guys got the guns out. Or I don't remember the whole thing, but they had threatened something, and so they didn't know if they would follow through on it. They were drinking, and
one time, him and Chuck were out drinking, and I don't know why, he stopped by. And I've decided the reason he stopped by is he knew I was going to get out of his case, and so that would make him feel better. Who wouldn't drink with somebody like that?
So that was his way to get. I can drink because look what I got to deal with. Now you know, right? Because she's going to be in my face. Let's go. But it was. This detox was really hard for him because I remember you guys saying they had to strap him down because he saw spiders. He saw these giant spiders or whatever.
Yeah.
But here he comes out, right? And we go to Pennsylvania. He's in an AA group with some really good people. He's telling his story. He's changing people's lives. The one thing he was always proud of is whenever we'd come up on an anniversary and he'd have that coin. And he'd say it's 20 years or it's 25 years.
I got the big gold one for whatever the
what was that? Was it six?
I can't remember.
Was it 50 or 60?
It's like it was like 40. I was in third grade when he got help.
That was, to me, when he talked about it, that's what.
So he was sober for like 2.5 years before we moved here. So he was good and sober by the time he moved here. But I think the move was I think it was good
a new
for
start.
him because it was, he didn't have to go, he wouldn't go someplace and find someone that he used to drink in the bar with.
But through all this though, and I think it's important to understand that, all of you are affected in some way, right? Because, you have your father, your husband, and you're trying to raise 4 kids in a tough situation, but your faith really kind of, and the people in Michigan, when you had the Bible study and then when you came here, it really helped make you strong.
Well, when I first moved to Pennsylvania, every morning I watched the 700 Club. That's how I made it.
You made it
because there was, and I asked the minister at church, "Are there any Bible studies around here?" And he said, "I don't know of any."
Yeah, she took us to the Methodist church because we were always Methodist, so we went to the Methodist church
here in PA.
Yeah.
In Claysville.
Claysville.
That was a trip too.
Well, you guys, yeah, I mean,
we could tell stories. Me and Janet embarrassed like the whole church because of the slang way they talk around here. Me and Janet, like.
Yeah, you thought it was funny.
Oh, we just laughed. We were sitting there, like, we couldn't hold back the laughter.
One of the teachers went to the Methodist church, and he said, "Beth, I know the kids at school make fun of you, but your children are pronouncing things right, and it's these Pennsylvanians."
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they used to tell me, "You talk funny," and I'd say, if you move to Michigan, they're putting you in speech class. I used to tell the kids that all the time.
I believe that too. Yeah. It's
so all the moving around.
Yeah.
I think that's good for kids too. It really is. They have to adjust to what is where you are.
Yeah.
And I can remember when they came home in Claysville and told me that I'd moved them to hell.
It was an adjustment.
Oh,
for them,
I was
right?
ill.
Because Marty and Gary were used to riding their bikes.
Did not want her in her room.
She sat me in the hall for at least 2 weeks.
Because her
and didn't
room
get a
was
desk.
so crowded with kids.
You were outside in the hall.
And then she'd give me a test on what was going on in the room, and I wouldn't do well. And then she told Mom that I needed to repeat the grade.
And
luckily, Mom worked at the school.
And so I called the teachers back in Michigan. I said, they want to put my daughter back. And so the teacher said, well, I'll go and talk to her 4th grade teacher, and I'll call you back, he said. And so he called me back, and he said, absolutely not. They are not putting that girl back. But it's because she didn't have any room in her classroom.
Well, yeah, you were out sitting outside. How are you supposed to know what's on the test?
Yeah, I mean, and she must have not looked at transcripts at all because I was a straight A-B student before I got there. But I couldn't catch what was going on. I was out in the hall a lot. And then she would give me the test. She put her
in the special reading and see.
She put me in 5th grade reading, and the teacher said, why are you down here?
Because she was an aide like me, and so we went to training classes and stuff, and she said, I don't know why they got your daughter in the reading class.
And the teacher said, why are you in here? I said, I don't know. She said, were you in lower reading? And I said, no. I wasn't in lower anything when I was, but it just was a way for.
Well,
do you think this adjustment, I mean, for Ray, and maybe even you too, was huge because it was new, but when you're dealing with, when you got kids coming from a big school and going to a smaller school.
Country school.
Because I know Terry used to say, Marty and Gary used to ride their bikes because it was all flat. They'd go clear down the block. And it's a little different in Claysville. You know how all places to go, you know.
Well, and I was standing in a department store one day, and the girl taking the information and stuff, she said, oh, you live in Claysville. I live in Claysville, too. How do you like it? And I said, oh, it's okay. People are friendly enough. But I said, they don't make friends with you. They'll say hi, but they don't make friends. And this black lady was standing beside me, and she said, with you, they don't make friends? So in other words, they don't think white people ever have. But in Claysville, it's very cliquey.
Yeah, very cliquey.
And that's where we moved.
I know. You moved to, yeah.
If you were born and raised there, then
it's okay.
And all your cousins were there, and either that or they're married to your cousin, or they're all related.
They were standing in the teacher's room talking about this one and this one, and they'd say, oh, that's my cousin, and oh, that's my aunt, and all that. I said, I know why I moved here. You guys needed new blood.
Need a new blood in the area. But I think what we're saying there is help. If someone is listening to this and saying, what do I do? And especially those who someone, or maybe your husband or brother, whatever, there are agencies to help, and you would be a huge advocate, because you yourself with Al-Anon, you were very, very involved, and you had your stories too. Oh, right. You would get up and didn't you and Ray even speak together?
Mm-hmm. For anniversaries, yeah.
So I mean, that if someone's listening, and we're going to leave links to Al-Anon, AA, and all these in the show notes. We'll have all that down there.
Out there? They still have Al-Anon out
There's
there?
not any here in Washington. There's not an Al-Anon group that one needs to be started.
I would say so, because everyone is affected by this.
Well, I know, and the best way to get it going for teenagers is to, when they have a club day at school, is to have an Al-Anon meeting. And but it's hard to get in. You have to go through counselors and everything
before you get.
Yeah.
What would you say Al-Anon helped you with the most? What was the changing?
Learning to mind my own business. What he's doing is not my business. Take care of me, take care of my children, but I have to stay out of his business.
They don't want you to enable him. Like, if he can't get out of bed, don't call him off
so you're
work.
not putting
let
his socks and his underwear on the bed.
No.
And don't, let him take the consequence. If he's late for work because he drank last night, you let him take the consequence, because he's never going to change his behavior.
As long as you're it easy for him.
Yeah.
I got you.
That's enabler.
Yeah. Was it hard to, because you were one that you said, we got easier because once Ray had all these things, and that's God working in Ray's life too, even though he, at the time, he was not, I don't want to say he didn't believe.
He's always said his higher power was God.
That changed when we started going to Florida, and he went to AA meetings, and we were going to a small church that folded, and he said, well, I know where we're going to go to church. And I said, oh, yeah. And because he met this guy at an AA meeting, and he's the preacher. And that's where we went to the church.
Now,
I watched him bow and accept Christ in his church.
This is, I want to,
years later.
Yeah, you guys, kids are out of the house, and you're what they consider snowbirds. You go down to Florida. And we wouldn't see you for like, I don't know, whatever, until the weather turned. Then you'd come back up here. But so he found that, and that was a huge change for him there too. God's still working in his life. I mean, things are changing, because Ray was not, I don't know where the atheist thing came from. I always heard that for some reason. He believes in atheism. And I don't know why that was.
He was raised Jehovah's
Witness. That's what it was.
His mother
Jehovah's
Witness.
That's what it was.
He left home at 15.
At 15.
So he really wasn't involved in that so much.
He wasn't. He didn't have church. He wasn't doing any of that.
He wasn't a church person.
But you went. You'd always taken your kids.
Yeah, and I always went. My mother always made sure I went to church.
But
even as a little kid, she had a carload full of kids, and she dropped them off at the steps in church.
Oh, your mom did?
Always.
So when you guys started going to Florida, you find this church, that has to be something, because you've been praying for a long time about Ray's,
for a long time she nagged him.
Well, I know, but we talked about that.
At some point during her Bible
you mean about going to
school,
going
to church. And then at some point, and then he went to Sunday morning meetings a lot. And at some point she quit nagging him and started praying for him, and just say a few prayers for him and leave him alone. And I think that's when he never heard it. Then she would just invite him every once in a while. Well, do you want to go with me?
The Sunday morning meeting was, I guess, a really great meeting. It was in Wheeling.
Here in Pennsylvania. Okay.
And the ladies always said, "How come you don't ever come to the Sunday morning meeting?" And I said, "Because I go to church." And but it was a mixed group. The men and the women were all together, and they had this meeting. And I guess they really had some great meetings together. It was AA and Al-Anon together. Yeah. And I never went because I always went to church.
Well, you had that was where you wanted to worship God, but even so, Ray was getting it too in a way, maybe just a little bit different. But it doesn't matter how you get it, as long as you get it.
Yeah.
And then again, you guys to Florida. He meets this preacher at AA, and then I mean, talk about it, just a huge turnaround from, and I think that's one of the things. It's hard for me. My life has been blessed, right? And I don't know why, thank God every day. And so it was hard for me to understand what you guys had lived through, what you experienced, I should say, and how you got through that, because I didn't know Ray at that point.
Didn't know any different.
Well, yeah, right. Especially you. I mean, you grew up really,
but he didn't know.
You didn't know.
My dad didn't bring it home.
Yeah, and she didn't.
It was really different.
She didn't. Her house, I don't think her mom and dad fought.
No, my
mom and dad. All I remember, the only things I remember when I'm really little were things that scared me. I do remember going for the picture, and I'm very young in that picture. We lived in Saginaw, and he forgot his teeth. That whole ride, because I was sitting in between them, remember, in the middle of the front seat.
Right.
And she nagged him the whole ride to go get our his teeth.
You're taking a picture. You got to have your teeth.
And we were going for a picture taken. And she, the whole ride, and I don't know how long it was, but it seemed like an eternity as a little kid, because she nagged him the whole time. And that was still in his drinking days. So it's a wonder we came all out of that with a picture and not all. Because I don't know how to show you.
I can only imagine. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure he didn't really smile.
So that was like one of my first memories. I don't really remember too much about that house or too much, but I remember that, and then something about the neighbor girl. Yeah, when we must have been away and when we came back.
Oh,
those are the only two things I remember from that.
The boys had been. I left the boys and took Ruth and I. Ruth lived down the road, and I took the girls, because they were little, shopping with me, and I left the boys home thinking they were big enough to say, well, they were fighting and chasing each other. They would run out the front door, and then they hit the handle, and there was blood on the glass. Here he had hit the handle and missed it, and his hand had gone through the glass, and the neighbor lady had taken him to have stitches and everything. I wondered, where's my kids? And look at this blood. What happened?
And I just remember coming in and her being upset in blood. And that's all. I don't really remember anything
And there's no phones. That's all. There's no cell phones, ladies and gentlemen. This is back in the day. We didn't have cell phones.
So the only things that I really remember from young are either mom and dad's fights. I do remember Uncle Norman, the Christmas tree thing. There's just a few, and a lot of them, they all laughed because they were all drinking. But as a little kid, it scared me. But my sister doesn't remember it as scary at all. It's just the different perspective on things. Because everyone was laughing, she thought it was funny too. But it was
the story
scary
was
to me.
The tree fell
on him. Down the stairs.
No, it wasn't. It was in the living room.
But I just remember them hauling that tree up them stairs, and then
when he came back, he didn't have much to say about it. And then, I don't know, somebody made a comment. And then when I went in the living room, I said, what happened to the tree? It was all crooked, And he said, well, it kind of tipped over.
It fell on him.
It fell on top of him.
It's
a real tree.
But then
it's not a fake tree.
I might have been at a different angle where I saw it hitting him.
Right.
His head hit. I mean, he hit his head and everything hard. But maybe where they were standing, they didn't see that. But I was little.
And so she figured he was laying on the floor. And
he wasn't.
Yeah, I probably thought he was dead, probably, where everyone else was laughing. They thought it was funny. And I was like, yeah.
So here we are. We're talking about Ray. He he's working. Things are really going, well for him. I mean, he's sober. He's doing well. And then now I don't remember when he started his own. Again, Ray was not one to shy away from work.
No.
And then he decided to start his own business.
Yeah, because he didn't have a job.
Didn't have a job.
And a friend of his in the AA program had this franchise in West Virginia. So he said, Ray, seeing you're not working, why don't you come down and go to work with me? Maybe you would like to get a franchise for up in here. And so he went, and he said, the hardest part is when you don't have jobs and you just go knocking on doors and talking to people. And so he said, I think I'll try it.
This is carpet cleaning.
Yep, carpet cleaning.
And that's about the time we were getting married.
We were
right?
getting married, yeah.
He went into business.
Just 80. Well, in fact, I think he started his business in 85 because I remember going over and he was having all the paperwork all done up and had gone to, where was it?
Texas.
Remember?
They
Texas.
Went to
Texas to train.
Yeah.
And, again, I only know Ray in this part of it, and never afraid to work, never afraid to, he'd always get his hands dirty. He's always building. Then you guys moved out of the big house and moved up here in a trailer. Oh, you moved several times. Clocks.
He started on
with
his saw. We went to visit his family, and his brother showed him. He had what kind of saw is it?
Jigsaw, like a jigsaw.
A little
it was a table. What do you call those?
Scroll
saw. That's it. Thank you.
It's a scroll saw.
Shows you how much I know.
His brother was making things. And so
I didn't know that.
He really got fancy.
Well, I'm telling you, we're looking at one here in our sunroom that Ray's made one for all his grandkids. And as he went, they got more intricate. I can't say it. I can't even say it.
Well, I wonder what Sam did with one that wasn't finished.
It is at their house because I had it in the back room and I was afraid of it. And so I think Janet put it either in the attic or she's put it someplace.
Some of these clocks, just all the little cutouts.
Because I wanted it for Sam. That was the last one. And yeah.
And that was interesting too when he did the clocks because Ray really wasn't known for his patience. You know what I mean? Like he would, if something wasn't going right, he'd get a little irritated. But boy, that really, his patience, just how it changed. He'd take his time and, he just really do. It was interesting to see that part of it and what his,
If you look at some of the finished products, and of course the first ones that he made, he gave them away to everybody.
Yeah, he just gave them away. Yeah, he's like, just put them in the back room or something. But they were good though. They weren't. There was some better than I would. They weren't. Yeah, it wasn't like it didn't keep time. They all kept time.
He
did. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And what we're trying to say is, as a family, if you can find a way to stay together, you guys made it work as hard as it was.
It's that it's too easy to walk away. It is hard to hang in there. And everything's not ever going to be easy. And you have to work through the rough spots in life. And if you love somebody, then you work through the bad parts. And that's just the way it is.
There is a reason why when you see somebody and you marry them, there's something that you loved about them.
Right.
And we've been watching shows, like we're watching this one show called Love is Blind. And so you don't see the person, right? So you and I would, like, if we're in this show, there's 14 people, and you're talking through this like glass, and you're just getting to know. And
it's colored glass. You can't see them.
Yeah, you don't see them. You don't know. You're just talking. And then you try and build the relationship saying love is blind. And I think there were 6 couples that ended up getting engaged because what happens is you ask them to be your wife. So you get engaged, right? Then you go away to Mexico for like a week to get to know each other. You get to see each other. You really get to know each other. And then you're married in 4 weeks later, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So what Terri and I are finding out after watching this show is they're building that connection, right? They're talking, and it's an emotional connection.
Connection.
So it was interesting to see because they were really worried about both sides. Well, are they going to like the way I look? Or, because that's a big, unfortunately, it is a big part of it. But it is. I shouldn't say unfortunately. It just is.
Look at them.
You got to, yeah. And it's what's weird is like
some of them are sticking with it, some of them aren't real attracted to the other person.
They're not attracted.
But
to there's an emotional.
They're trying
connection.
to work through it, and then there's other ones that are just like.
And I think, and then what I was trying to get to in a roundabout way too was as they're together now, right? They're in the same little hotel, whatever it is. It's a really fancy place. Now you're living with someone, right? It's different because you're staying.
You don't know somebody till you live
absolutely,
with
because that one gentleman was saying you need to brush your teeth with this all natural, and she's looking at him like that stuff stinks. He's like, oh man, look how white my teeth are, and she's like, that ain't happening. So I mean. So it's you love that person, right? You loved them for a reason. There was an attraction, right? And then not unlike Pam and Tommy, Lee and Pam, who got married after 4 days and didn't know nothing about each other. Hopefully you date for a while, you get to know each other, and you build on that. Okay. But when you live together, that's totally different.
I didn't know Ray had a temper, and I was married to him, and the class was taking the class trip, and I thought, well, I think I'll go visit my husband. Him and a friend had an apartment. So I went down there, and he bought a new package of underwear, and he couldn't get it open, and he got so mad, I thought he was going to tear the whole place.
He couldn't get a bag of underwear open?
Yeah, and I just...
This is a big man.
I just sat there and I thought, oh my gosh.
This was the guy that wrestled. He couldn't get a underwear open? What is going on?
And what is going on?
Yeah, you're probably thinking he is really having a temper. What if things are really bad? Forget about the underwear. But
so
she would bring
that was a shock to you.
She would bring that out at him when he first started having just a couple. Like after he got quite a few in him, then he would be more sorry and sad. But when he first started, that's when she, like after 2 or 3, don't you think you had enough? That's when I always thought he might kill her.
2 is too many, right?
He might kill her because she would get up in that big guy's face and say, "You're about." She would yell.
So even after the temper, you still weren't scared.
No,
you didn't. You're going to get your point across whether you like it or not.
Yes, and that's how she was with him.
And one time we came home from being out. And of course, I probably had one drink for the evening, and I don't know how much he drank. And
you weren't counting. You weren't a one that counted.
No, I didn't count his drinks. But anyway, so he even helped me take my coat off and hang it in the closet, and turned around and smashed the wall in. He was helping me with my coat, and I thought, what happened?
What did happen?
I don't know. He just turned around and smashed the wall, and they were sleeping on the other side.
We woke up and there's a hole in our wall.
Well, you had said he kicked it.
No,
he did. He hit it, and then I think he couldn't get it all the way through, so he kicked it.
Oh, okay.
But he got through 2 things. Yeah.
But you have no idea why he.
No, he had helped me take my coat off and hang it in the
Maybe
closet.
the coat was too heavy and he couldn't get it on the hanger. If you couldn't open underwear, maybe you couldn't hang up your coat. I don't know what's going on.
But there were quite a bit of incidents in my childhood that,
Yeah, like I said, when I...
flu.
Yeah. When I talk about...
The kitchen table, we were eating one time, and she said, downstairs, when he got upset, and he flipped all the dishes, everything, underneath him, the 4 table legs.
Now, he's sober at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just flipping tables now.
Was he sober then when that happened? Yeah, he might have.
I thought that was in Claysville.
No, that was in right before we moved.
Oh, that could be. Okay.
Yeah. But, all 4 legs sitting up the whole dinner underneath the table, and yeah.
And we're just all sitting there. How did it get by us?
Yeah,
it didn't hit any. None of the legs hit any. I don't know how he did it. But
that was a magician.
Yeah.
Couldn't get a bag of underwear open, but boy, he could turn that table upside down.
With the whole dinner.
With 4 of yous, right? There
was 6 people
of you.
sitting at the table.
And no one got hit with food or anything.
And remember, there was a dog, and I don't know how the dog wasn't underneath there either, because we were always
feeding. Was that Mitzi?
Yeah.
Mitzi. I remember Mitzi.
Feeding that dog under the table, especially the other kids when she had liver. They fed all their the dog all their liver.
Well, I think what we're, as we're telling some of these stories, and the great thing about it is how the recovery. That's what we're trying to help. If you're having issues that you're listening and you're listening to this, you're thinking, what am I going to do? There is help. And whether it's a Bible study, a really good friend, Al-Anon, there's so many different agencies.
And there's more out there now. Like there's recovery programs that are 30 days, 60 days, 90-day programs. And some insurances even will pay for some of those programs nowadays. And they have them for alcoholic and drugs now. They have them, like Greenbrier has programs for both. There's more help if you want it. The thing that you have to learn, though, is the person won't get help till they feel they need it. All the nagging and all the fighting is not going to make them get help. They have to come to the realization that they need help.
But your dad got to a point where, he was
Helping
forced
others.
into it, though, as far as when he got the DUI, if they hadn't have really, I don't know what it was. It's kind of, as Ray is very, he was very opinionated. He had his opinions, he knew, but to be able to have someone tell him, this is what you're going to do to get help, and to do it, that says a lot about him. He knew he needed to do something, I guess.
There's AA has open AA meetings, and to just go and hear an open speaker speak about their struggles with the disease of alcoholism is very enlightening from their point of view. And open AA meetings are, every AA group has open meetings, and you can go and hear their speakers.
So it's not like, even if you're not
an alcoholic.
But Al-Anon was huge for you because that helped you get to. But I'm saying, even if you're
and
looking
anyone
to
who knows someone or has someone in their life that they feel has an alcoholic problem is a candidate for Al-Anon.
Right.
You don't have to be the husband or the wife, the spouse. You can be the mother. You can be,
brother, sister.
Yes, yeah. You can. It can be any. It could be your niece or your nephew, and you could go and try to get ideas of how to help.
So anyone that's thinking, well, I'm not sober yet. Well, that doesn't matter. If you show up with a will to want to change, and you would listen to this someone that's willing to tell their story, it could change their life.
Yes.
For the better, just by listening to, like you said, Ray did that. Was it hard for him in the beginning to speak about some of the challenges?
I think so.
Because he's not a guy that likes to get up in front of people. But even through all that, though, he got so much. People would say how he's eloquent when he got up
Peggy
there.
has his lead on tape.
I think Janet might have it now. We'll have to ask who has it.
Yeah.
It's an older one.
It's incredible to. There are so many other stories that we probably could have got into, and things that you had to endure. That were, listen, we're not here.
Downs of life.
Yeah, we're not here to smudge the man. He had, like everyone, we all have
He was a great guy.
He was, and we all have our demons, but he was able to change that for the better. And what a man he became,
and help a lot.
And it doesn't matter what age, right? You can make, if you're struggling, you can make a change today. And there is help, and we'll try and put all these links in the show notes. And Beth, I want to thank you. It's been I don't know how long we've been. Yeah,
this has been long. You might have to.
We've been doing this for a while.
You might have to do it in a couple.
But listen. This is what it's about, though. Life is. You don't want to break it up. This is what life is. And this is what it's all about. And I really appreciate you coming on and helping. And we, like I said, if you know you need help, we'll put everything in the show notes. We'll make sure there's links, and hopefully this helps you. And for Beth and for myself, And Terri, we want to thank you for listening.
Today it's easy to find out with the internet and stuff.
Where things are.
I'm not big on the internet and stuff, but I know that's how people find us now.
Yeah, everything's done. You can do it on your phone.
Right.
So when we come back, Terri and I will say our goodbyes. But first, if you're thinking about podcasting, maybe you're listening to the show and you're thinking, I have a lot of ideas. I've got friends that we could talk sports, we could talk news, we could talk whatever. Then Buzzsprout is the company you want to really look into, because it took me a while to decide who's going to host our podcast. And I went through hours of watching different people talk about different podcasting, but I kept going back to Buzzsprout because of all their resources. They actually had a podcasting course for free. Starts at the beginning of what's the idea? What would you like to talk about? Then it goes from there and it talks about what you might need. It doesn't have to be expensive equipment. It could be your phone, because they also have mastering. So if you're done, you just load it in. It'll master it and sound perfect. And plus, they make it so easy to take your podcast onto all these different hosts. You got Spotify, Apple, Google, and so many more. We're on tons of them, and they made it so simple. It's very simple. If you're thinking about podcasting, there's a link in our show notes. Click on that. Do some research. See what you think, and you'll find that they have a lot of resources and a lot of great help. If you do that link and you sign up, you get a $20 gift certificate from Amazon. If you're thinking about podcasting, today's the day to do it, and do it with Buzzsprout. They will really help you. All right, Terri. It was quite a show, and she's just so enlightening. Everything she says, and she's always been, every time I've met her, she's always been positive. And to be able to come on and talk about the things that you guys have gone through in your life, and you too, it says a lot, because that's opening up, getting it out, right? And so I thought it was hopefully an enlightening, and maybe somebody out there that maybe was thinking about, where do I go? Maybe this episode helped them. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing people have to remember is that you walk into a place like Al-Anon and you don't know anyone, and it's uncomfortable, maybe a little bit afraid, but they're there to help you. Remember that these people have been through this. That's why they're there, and they're going to understand, and you probably can't tell them anything worse than what they've already seen. Once you get over that first meeting, then it would get easier. Yeah. But I can imagine, especially, if someone's kind of introverted, going out for help is hard. But once you take that step, you'd find it easier and easier to go to meetings. And I know not only did they help my family, I watched my family change as I grew up, but I know my dad helped a lot of people. A lot of people have a lot of respect for him, because when he would sponsor someone, he was all in. And it didn't matter what time of day or night you called him, he would get up and he would go and help you not take that drink.
Yeah, he did that for sure. He had a huge, huge heart, and I was proud to know him. And I know he's up there watching us. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It's been a lot of fun talking about it. Well, when I say fun, it's tough to say fun, but it's fun talking to Beth, because she has so much insight, and she's so strong, and it makes me feel like I'm at ease. And so hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Thanks for listening. I'm Ron.
I'm Terri.
And we'll see you soon. Have a great week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's show.